number 1 to collapse first, shortly after 10 a.m. A charge of glass and steel came plummeting down. The smoke buried the surrounding buildings, it completely engulfed it. About a half an hour later, more again of the unthinkable. The North World Trade Tower, number 2, came down. Began raining steel and glass everywhere, smoke everywhere, the damage unbelievable, incredible. And in between all the construction, the confusion, another terrorist attack, this time in Washington, near the Pentagon. Flames and smoke there. That building has been evacuated. That was a result of a U.S. Air Flight 737 out of Dallas into L.A. 50 people on board that plane. That plane also hijacked. 5 floors of the Pentagon have collapsed. We've got 4 planes down altogether now. A Boeing 757 in Pennsylvania. It was on its way from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco. That's a United Flight 93. And then you have the 2 planes here in New York and the one that went down into the Pentagon. Jim?
Thank you, John. This is, I suppose, one of those days when we'll all look back and know exactly where we were when this happened. Linda Schmidt, you happened to be working out this morning.
Yeah, I was at Crunch Gym at 59th and 2nd. And of course, you know, you're working out and you're not really paying attention to what's going on the monitors because normally they have, you know, just frivolous stuff up there. But then all of a sudden everybody started gravitating towards the monitor and you could see of course the plume of smoke coming out of the World Trade Center, and you figure, okay, so there's a fire going on at the World Trade Center. And we have a lot of high rises around here, so you figure it's just a fire. 10 minutes later, I mean, just the groups of people that were just gravitating toward the monitor, because then at that point they had turned up the volume and they were announcing that a plane had actually crashed into one of the towers. This was before the second plane had actually crashed into the second tower. So immediately, of course, I rushed home and called the station and rushed right in. But you just couldn't believe it. I mean, everyone was just gasping in shock, just gathered around the monitors looking at this video.
Now, you have friends or family in the military?
I do. I don't want to get into specifics about who that is, but I do have a contact that works at Picatinny Arsenal, which is a research facility. It's about an hour outside the city here in Dover, New Jersey. They were immediately called into anti-terrorism briefings, and of course those are being held at military installations all across the country. And another facility that we have right close to us is in southern New Jersey, which is McGuire Air Force Base. And then of course one of the biggest military installations in the country is Fort Bragg, so everybody's on full alert with this.
I'm sure they are. As a matter of fact, John Rowland mentioned earlier that the country has moved to a DEFCON 5 alert, which is the highest state of alert that we can get short of out-and-out warfare. Mm-hmm. So James Ford said something earlier that I just want to comment on, and that is he couldn't understand how people were some smiling, some joking, some taking pictures of the tragedy. And it's been my experience that you never know how people are going to react during a tragedy. You're used to the movie version where everybody reacts in a predictable and familiar way, right. But you just never know how people are going to react individually to a tragedy as it befalls them. So I suppose that gives some understanding of the reaction on the part of people this morning when the tragedy struck.
You know what? Can we go to Adrienne Nardo right now, and she'll give us a wrap-up on what's open and what's not and what the traffic is like. Adrienne.
Rosanna, actually most everything is closed as far as bridges and tunnels are concerned. All the airports remain closed in the United States, so you can try to check with your airline. Again, the phone lines are jammed. It is really tough trying to get out there. Try to stay off the phones unless it's an emergency call. Let's go to the maps and talk about what is happening. Again, reiterating that all of the airports are closed. No planes are leaving the United States. Now, we do have gridlock conditions around many of the airport areas, many of the crossings. That's obvious. Folks are trying to see if they can get into and out of the city. And again, they cannot do that right now. Let's talk about the George Washington Bridge first. It is closed in both directions. Again, the George Washington Bridge is closed in both directions. This delay has caused problems on Route 95 all the way up to Westchester County. Folks are just trying to travel on the roadways. You just need to stay home if you absolutely don't need to be on the roads and it's an emergency situation. Again, 95 is backed up Westchester County all the way down to the George Washington Bridge. The Lincoln Tunnel and the Holland Tunnels, they are closed in both directions. The Brooklyn Battery Tunnel is closed in both directions. The Verrazano Bridge, they are letting you get to Staten Island, but you cannot go to Brooklyn. And on the Verrazano Bridge, they're not charging you a toll to get out of the city to go Staten Island bound. All of the other Staten Staten Island crossings, the Bayonne Bridge, the Outer Bridge crossing, the Gulf Hills Bridge, they are all closed in both directions as a result of what is happening in the city. Obviously, gridlock conditions in lower Manhattan. If you're trying to use the East River crossings, a little bit better luck getting yourself to Queens. The Triborough Bridge to Queens is open. It is closed Bronx Manhattan bound. The Throgs Neck Bridge, the Whitestone Bridge, those are both open to Queens as well. On the inbound side of the Bronx, those crossings are closed. The Queens Midtown Tunnel is closed into the city. It is open to Queens, but gridlock conditions at the Midtown Tunnel trying to get out of the city. And again, any of these tunnels and bridges are subject to closure as they feel necessary. All train service is suspended into and out of Manhattan as far as the subways go. The PATH trains are concerned, Metro North, New Jersey Transit trains, LIRR. There is limited service in the outer boroughs on the subway stations. Again, no buses into and out of New York from New Jersey Transit. However, they are adding extra service out of Hoboken and Newark's Penn Station, and New Jersey Transit buses are operating within the state of New Jersey. They said they have limited service trying to get you out of the city on New Jersey Transit, but definitely give yourself extra time. If they could get you out of Penn Station, that would be great. One of your other alternates, the ferries, those are not operating into and out of the city, so you cannot take a boat as of right now. And again, watch for delays on any other roadways heading into and out of the city. Also roadways with views of the city, like Route 3. The New Jersey Turnpike has been closed northbound at exit 14. Too many cars on that roadway, so if you don't need to go anywhere and it's an emergency, please stay home. And obviously, parking rules, they're in effect, but it doesn't matter right now. Back to you, Rosanna.
Okay, thanks.
I'll take it, Adrian. Thank you very much. Let's get back downtown to Ground Zero, where James Ford still is. James?
That's right. We're at Broome and 6th Avenue, about 20 blocks north of the World Trade Center. We have come to this point having been in where all the smoke is. Now, joining me right now are two gentlemen who were on the other side of the World Trade Center. In other words, they've had to come this far north of the World Trade Center just to get to where they need to go, and I can certainly attest you gentlemen are covered.
Talk better.
Talk about what you've seen.
It's when the buildings went down, you could not see. You could not see. It was as if there was a volcano, which essentially is what it was in reverse. Dust, 2-3 inches thick on the streets. Paper from every firm in the Trade Center. I saw Port Authority stationery, law firm stationery. Broken glass, pieces of the building, vehicles on the street that had been responding to the first incident, damaged, blown glass, bent bumpers, bent fenders. It was devastating.
And certainly there's a concern for you for ingestion of...
We stopped at an ambulance and got these breathing masks, and they were kind enough to give them to us.
Talk to us for a second just to how important it was to be... We had to escape north away from the big cloud. You were in it. Talk about how important it was to have some sort of dust mask.
It was critical. You could not, I don't know what the long-term effect of whatever is in that dust would have been, but the short-term effect, running eyes, blinded, and you couldn't breathe, and it was awful. I mean, I can't say more than that. These were critical.
They evacuated the courthouse. We were in court. They evacuated the courthouse. We were escorted
which is at
out.
the Customs House, right?
The old Customs House.
So about how far south of the World Trade Center? Is that south?
About a block or two south of the World Trade Center. We were in the courtroom when the building collapsed. And when the building collapsed, the first building collapsed, they immediately evacuated the building. They sent us out through emergency stairwells, and they sent us out to the street, not knowing what was out there. I could not see. And I basically followed the perimeter of the building around until I was able to find a door back into the courthouse. And one of the marshals was kind enough to let me into the courthouse, and they let other people in the courthouse as well to escape the ash, and you couldn't see the heat and the terrible situation.
All the lobbies
outside.
of all of the office buildings in the area are filled with people who came down, tried to get out, found it very inhospitable, and they're congregating in lobbies all over the downtown area.
Let me ask one other thing, gentlemen. You've already come about 30 blocks to get to where we are from south of the World Trade Center. Where we encountered both of these gentlemen walking north. Where are you going?
My first stop is Bleecker and 6th, where my kids are in school, and my next stop is 57th and Madison, where my office is, after I drop my kids off at home if school is out. And we do what we've got to do.
Wow, if I may say so, both of you, when we encountered you, looked pretty dazed. How would you describe your state right now?
Not dazed, just clear, maybe a bit tired because it's getting hot and it's getting humid. But other than that, no adverse effects.
I had my sunglasses on and I had a mask on, which I took off about 4 or 5 blocks ago.
Okay. Thanks very much for talking with us. Best of luck, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, again, we'll wrap it up here at this spot for right now on 6th Avenue and Broome Street. Back to you in the studio.
All right, James, thank you. And those two gentlemen, they've been through an ordeal, but they were two of the lucky ones. Take a look at this video we've got here. These people that you're about to see right now were stuck on the building before the collapse of the World Trade Center. Do we have that lined up? Yes, there's the video you're looking at. These people waving frantically, trying somehow to get attention, somehow to save themselves from the inferno all around them. Moments later, the building collapsed.
You know, Jim, looking at this video we were discussing earlier, it is so eerie to look at this and know that those people probably did not survive.
It would be highly unlikely.
Some of those people actually jumped. My husband's office is close by, and he said he saw people actually either jumping or falling.
Some people
from the
in
building.
desperation, what do you do? Yeah.
Right.
We are joined in the studio now by David Harris. David is with the American Jewish Committee, who has paid special attention to terrorism, international terrorism over the years. David, good morning. I'm sorry we're joining under these horrific circumstances. But I suppose the first question is, what now?
I think the first thing now is for the country to come together, and clearly it is. This is an act of war against the United States. It's a time for us to stand as one, as a nation, and it's a time for us to reach out to all the victim families and to assert that in moments like this, we are Americans. We stand shoulder to shoulder with each other in solidarity with our government and in sympathy with the victims.
Have we been lax in our security? Or is this something that could not have been avoided?
I think the temptation by some would be to second guess. Oh, we could have, we should have. This is not a moment for that. I think what's clear, though, is that Americans have never taken the issue of terrorism all that seriously. We've had terrorist acts over the years, both against targets in the United States and American targets overseas. And for a period of time thereafter, we focus attention. But then we begin to drift away, we begin to think about other things, and we don't see it as a permanent, sustained threat. I fear that today will mark the beginning of a whole new approach to the issue of terror.
If you stay there just one second, please, David, but we have some more developments in the story from John Rowland down in the newsroom. John?
All right, thanks, Jim. Again, all of this beginning about 9 o'clock this morning here in Lower Manhattan. A horrific, horrendous sight, despicable attack by terrorism. Again, the one group that we had talked about earlier that we thought had claimed responsibility for it is now denying it. Yasser Arafat coming out and condemning this terrorism. Governor Pataki has said that this horrific incident at the World Trade Center, which appears to be part of a coordinated terrorist attack, is a tragedy of unspeakable proportions, a crime against all Americans and all decent people around the world. He's been in contact with the president and the mayor to ensure that the appropriate emergency response is as effective and well coordinated as possible. Con Edison, by the way, is telling us that the terrorist attacks that knocked down both the World Trade Center buildings is causing outages in Lower Manhattan. Services is out between West Street and Hudson River south of Chambers Street. Gas and steam service in that area have also been interrupted. The planes that went down, we have some late information about 2 United flights. United Flight 93, that was a Boeing 757. It left Newark at 8 o'clock this morning on its way to San Francisco. 38 passengers, 2 pilots, 5 flight attendants. That flight is the one that went down near Pittsburgh. The second plane was United 175, a Boeing 767. That left Boston at 8 o'clock this morning on its way for Los Angeles. There were 56 people on that flight, 2 pilots, 7 flight attendants. And the 2 United jetliners that crashed Thursday morning, one near Pittsburgh, the company isn't saying about another one of its planes that crashed, but didn't say where. And there was word that the flight that crashed to the Pentagon in Washington may have been a U.S. air flight or another United flight. We're getting conflicting information on that. The Pentagon, of course, attacked as part of this terrorism attack, Jim, and 5 floors of the Pentagon have collapsed, and goodness knows how many people were killed there. A horrendous amount of people killed here in New York. the word used by Mayor Giuliani. Information now about the Long Island Railroad. It's running limited eastbound services to get people out of New York City. Nothing coming in to get people out of New York City. Trains are leaving from Flatbush Avenue, Brooklyn Hunters Point Avenue in Queens. There is no service from Manhattan. The LIRR says passengers for the Port Washington branch should use the Woodside Avenue station in Queens. That's the latest information we have for you from here, Jim.
Thank you very much. We have been sitting here in the studio, have been looking at the pictures, but not feeling viscerally the experience. Here are some people who did.
Just come bear straight towards the World Trade Center. So you noticed that it was lower than normal at the time, and we just felt a big explosion. I didn't know what after the fact that we talked about, I knew it was a plane. I was on the way down. It was pretty calm. There's some small fires, and from the 85 on below, there were small fires and some floods, but it wasn't that bad. And I had just gotten out of the building. I was crossing the street when I heard some rumbling. I saw someone coming off the top of the building. I just ran. I didn't know where to go. My first reaction was to go down into a subway stop just to get some cover, because I felt this cloud of all this stuff, the stuff coming down, the debris, and I thought that was the best, smartest thing, but I got stuck in there for a while. It was pitch dark.
The explosion went up on that last building. There was probably a bomb inside the plane. He saw it too. The explosion went up.
The explosion went up like a mushroom. The second building.
The second plane was an old prop plane, like an old Dakota.
Say it again.
The second plane was like an old prop plane. It's a dual prop plane, like a Dakota or something like that. It wasn't a Dakota, but it came in low from over Newark Way, and you saw where the impact was, but it impacted, and then the explosion just blew out this way.
I saw 4 people coming down.
They're all jumping.
I saw a lot of people coming
at 9:05. It was 9:05.
How'd you get out then?
What happened was I was down in the basement. All of a sudden we heard a loud bang, and the elevator doors blew open. Some guy was burnt up, so I dragged him out. His skin was all hanging off. So I dragged him out and I pulled him out of the parking lot. This was what was left on it. Pulled him out. When I pulled him out, I looked up and the second bomb blew off. Just saw a big burst. And then I saw people jumping out of the buildings.
All right, those are some of the eyewitnesses. We're joined now by another eyewitness. She joins us in the studio. Kathleen Connolly was in the World Trade Center when the blast took place. Is that correct, Kathleen?
Yeah, I was I work in 7 World Trade, and we heard and felt some sort of explosion. And, we were kind of joking, this girl, well, that wasn't the subway, and next thing I hear people from the other side kind of screaming. So my coworker just said, let's go. So we grabbed our bags and we just went downstairs, and our lobbyway is very big and is with glass, and we faced the plaza where the World Trade Center is, and there was people mulling about, and we just said, well, we don't want to stand here, we want to get out. We went down to the next level, and then a side door, someone opened a side door, and we got out through the garage way and just kept going. And I don't know what happened to those people in there. We just kept walking, and we saw some lady scream and cry. And we crossed the street, and I said, oh, maybe somebody fell down. Fell out of the building. We looked up. Within seconds, the second explosion went off. I felt the heat on my face. I grabbed her. We ran. She fell. I picked her up. We just kept running and running. I didn't even know what happened. I thought it was a bomb. Until I was halfway uptown, and we heard people talking. That's how I found out it was planes. I had no idea.
How did you get up here?
I walked. I knew, my sister works here, so I knew it would be open. I'm like, she works in a newsroom. Probably they're covering it. I know one place will be open. I don't know how to get home. We definitely didn't want to go. I had no idea the subway was closed.
So you walked from World Trade up to E67?
Yeah. And we were very surprised that we saw so many people walking. We're like, why are people walking? Like,
what were the streets like? Were people just milling around by the World Trade Center, or were they trying to get out of there?
It was both. I mean, my friend and I, my coworker, we just ran for our, literally, when you say you're running for your lives, we were running for our lives. We were just running. And we didn't look back until we were way, way clear. Then there were some people milling about, and we couldn't understand it. We're like, well, we're not doing that. We're just going to run. Mm-hmm. And it's true. I heard some people talking, like people taking pictures, and they were. And, maybe people do strange things.
They do.
They probably were in shock as well.
You were on 7 World Trade Center. That's one of the smaller buildings in the complex.
Yeah.
What floor were you on?
20.
Did you have trouble getting down the elevator?
We didn't go in the elevator. We went directly to the stairs.
You went right down this, as you should in a situation like that.
And I thought to myself, I don't know how they're getting down the stairs in the bigger buildings, because it was pretty calm. I'm a little not calm, but it was pretty calm. We walked down there, but then all of a sudden, when you see so many people, you start to get a little claustrophobic. And we just said, you know, we just can't leave.
When you were going down in the staircase, were other people going down with you? Lots of people down with you?
Yeah, there was people, but it wasn't as much as I thought. I think people were really confused because all of a sudden nobody was around. So you didn't get nobody told you what to do or where to go. Everybody just made up their own minds to run.
Because usually you're supposed to stay, especially in a high-rise, stay on that floor unless the fire is on that floor.
There was no communication whatsoever.
So what was the situation like in the stairwell, though? Were there lots of people just flocking and racing down the steps, or what was going on?
And I think what happened was, again, nobody really knew what happened. We were like one of the first people to leave, and I think afterwards, I think more people came down.
So at first it was just trickling out?
There was no smoke by us, and yes, it was trickling out. But by the time I got to the bottom, a lot of the building had already congregated. So I'm like, this is not going to house the entire building. I mean, there's people just going to just start smashing each other.
How far did you get when you heard the second blast?
To be honest with you, I was wondering the same thing. I'm like, I don't know how far I am, but I did feel the heat of the blast. By the time we stopped running, and it was like, you know, I didn't look behind me, but my friend tripped. And luckily nobody trampled her, you know, and I kind of helped her up a little. But
there were lots of people running in that direction?
There was lots of people running. I looked up and I was like, uh-oh, you know, we better get up, you know. And we finally veered off, you know, going east a little bit, because everybody was on that one street. So we're like, I don't want to spend the whole time on the street. Let's kind of...
Do you think people were helping one another as much as they possibly could, or was it every man for themselves?
Yeah, we helped a couple people on the way out. Again, it was kind of calm, because when we first left, we were like, okay, we're gone. Everything's okay. Kind of, like the worst happened.
And you weren't quite sure what had really happened at that point.
I had no idea that it was plane. I had no clue. I thought it was just, you know, someone said a generator, someone said a bomb. It didn't matter to me. I just ran. And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did the thought of terrorism hit you at any point?
After we started walking, I said, oh, well, you know, America's in trouble. You know, somebody's not happy with us. So, you know.
After that second blast, you figured that it was a bomb and terrorism.
For sure. And then we were walking, and then someone said something about the Pentagon. You know, we were just in shock. We just didn't believe it.
Did you try at any point to get a taxi or to take a subway?
No, it wasn't even an issue. I mean, she's in the Bronx. She's like, I'm walking the Bronx. I'm like, I'm walking the Woodside. I'll see it, you know. We didn't even think about it.
Well, we can see that you were really shaken up about this.
I'm sorry.
We really appreciate you coming up
shaking,
here. Yeah,
I'm just worried about my coworkers. I don't know what happened to anybody. I just... I saw 5 people with me. I left the building. It was just me and Maria. I have no clue what happened to anybody, so I'm a little nervous.
Well, let's hope they're okay.
Well, you were not injured yourself, I take it?
No, I'm telling you, I feel like I'm the luckiest person on earth. I mean, I probably missed even just a minor injury by minutes.
Did you have, we heard reports earlier from a lot of people who were in the area at the time, that because of all the debris that was pouring down on their heads, there was great trouble breathing. Did you get out of it before that happened?
Out of it, again, I was one of the first people out of the building, and we didn't look back. We just kept going. And like, you know, probably around 42nd Street or Grand Central by the time we got in that area. That's when people started.
What are your thoughts as you look at that picture there?
I don't know what to think. I saw it, like, I didn't see that part, because that looks like it's the collapse. But that tower that is still standing, I saw from my window and I had to look up, and I saw the fire. And that's when I ran, got, you know, stupidly, whatever, I got my bag, you know, and called for Maria, and she was already in the stairwell, and we just hit the road. By the time we got out, I turned around, and it looked like the second explosion was like, I don't know if it was bigger or what, but I just saw this big ball of fire, and we just felt it. Like, I'm like, this must be like what war is like, or I don't know what, and we didn't think, we just ran. And everybody ran. She lost her shoes, you know, it was horrible.
You're just running on adrenaline, I guess.
Exactly right, right.
I know it's incidental at this point, but did you still have your bag? Hung onto the back. Again, you never know.
Well, I said,
what people
I don't have any money
to do and how they're going to react.
Yeah, how am I going to get, you know, if I have to need money for anything or my identification, we knew we weren't going to make it back in the building. And again, at that very moment, it was so confusing. There were some people in the building, some people on my floor, some people not. There was no announcement. We didn't know.
Did you see people outside, like rescue workers or policemen or firemen, directing you, telling you to move on?
That was a little too early. You know, like we were out, again, very early. And, but there was tons of people going up the street. There were tons of emergency vehicles, signs, everything. And what I was confused about, there were cars still coming towards our way. And we're like, they really should not be coming this way. They should be off the road, taxis, trucks, everybody, people walking that way. Well, like, are you insane? Get away, So.
And these weren't emergency vehicles, they're just...
just cars going that way. And I don't know, I don't know why.
Well, the further you made it out alive.
Me too.
Yeah, absolutely. The further you got away from that area, though, and you're walking on the street, what was the reaction of people walking on the street at that point? I mean, did a lot of people seem to know what was going on, or were they oblivious to what was happening?
The further away I got, the more people knew. Because when you're in the middle of it, like, we didn't really know what was going on. So, and there were a lot of people crying. There were a lot of people in shock. So, I saw like one or two women who had collapsed, but luckily there were good Samaritans who, were already at her aid and helping her out. So,
right. Well, thank you. Just relax a little bit. Right now, we're going to take you and make you listen to a tape. Ted Kennedy and Laura Bush were at a hearing on Capitol Hill, and here's what they had to say after they heard about all these attacks.
Hello.
Good morning. All of us deplore the acts of terrorism that we have seen in these past minutes. And our hearts reach out to all of those who have suffered, lost their lives, and are injured right now. And all of us reach out as Americans to the brave rescue workers that are attempting to help our fellow citizens. We, out of respect for those efforts, have postponed our hearing this morning. We underline the point that it is postponed. We are not going to see the business of America deferred because of terrorism, whether it's in education or in other area of public policy. We're looking forward to hearing from the First Lady on a subject matter which is of central concern to all families in this country, and because of her experience and her leadership, this committee and the Congress and the American people would have benefited greatly from her comments. And we will look forward to an early reappearance by the First Lady for this committee on the subject of early education. And Mrs. Bush, we recognize now.
You heard from the President this morning, and Senator Kennedy and Senator Gregg and I both join his statement in saying that our hearts and our prayers go out to the victims of this act of terrorism, and that our support goes to the rescue workers, and all of our prayers are with everyone there right now. Thank you all.
All right, a hearing postponed on the Hill by Senator Kennedy and accompanied by First Lady Laura Bush, giving their reactions to the tragedies of the morning. John Rowland?
All right, Jim, I'm just trying to make some sense for you about all the effects that have happened here and across the country because of these terrorist attacks. The hearings in Washington not only postponed, the Capitol evacuated all the major government buildings in Washington, D.C. being evacuated, as well as here in New York, Connecticut, and in New Jersey. The baseball games across the country all postponed for tonight. These terrorist attacks in Manhattan have shut down the subway lines. They've crippled cell phone service. They forced the evacuation from Wall Street to the United Nations. Lower Manhattan closed. Only emergency people allowed there now. Thousands of people walking across the Brooklyn Bridge. Primary election is called off. Airports are all closed. Trading on Wall Street has been suspended. The United Nations building has been evacuated. Offices throughout Manhattan are closed. Kids are being kept in schools because their parents can't get to them. Every payphone in the city, of course, is lined up. The traffic problems are incredible, difficult to describe. Hudson River crossings are closed going into the city, and the Jersey Turnpike is closed northbound above Interchange 11 in Woodbridge. Turnpike Authority spokesman says that motorists leaving the city are being waved through the congested toll plazas. Nobody's taking any tolls today. Southbound traffic is allowed over the length of the turnpike. Long Island Railroad services all the train service into and out of the Penn Station and Flatbush Avenue. Brooklyn service is suspended until further notice. Limited train service from the LIRR east of Jamaica Station, limited service between Port Washington and the Flushing Main Street stations. The MTA says there is no subway service into or out of Manhattan, temporarily suspended because of power problems. Buses are operating in some cases. Emergency bus service plans are being put into effect. All the bridges, Jim, all the tunnels outbound, with the exception of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, at the direction of the governor. No fares, as I said, are going to be collected either way. You can get out of Manhattan, you cannot get in, and they're asking you, please don't even try. Jim, back to you.
Ali, thank you very much. Ali, John, thank you very much. I'm so used to dealing with my partner in the morning. Linda, you talking about some military installations?
Yeah, that's right, Jim. I just got off the phone with a close contact at Picatinny Arsenal, which is a research facility about an hour outside the city here. It's in Dover. They have closed for the day. Now, as I told you guys earlier, after this thing happened, they immediately went into emergency anti-terrorism briefings. They are still involved in those meetings, and this is a couple of hours afterward. Also, military bases all across the country have been shut down, and they are on full alert today. And of course, at every military installation right now, they have the anti-terrorism briefings going on.
As John Rowland mentioned earlier this morning, the city is on DEPCON 5, a state of alert that is the most serious just before all-out war. So that's where we are right now as a response to these terrorist attacks this morning. Dick Oliver was down in the thick of it earlier this morning. Ali, are you still there?
Yes, Jim. We're at NYU Downtown Hospital. Just to give you an update of the hospital's activities, they've treated more than 250 patients with injuries in breathing and cardiac problems. The hospital, which, as you know, is located in the shadow of the World Trade Center, just a half a dozen blocks away, established a second emergency room and a command post to keep medical personnel advised as to arriving patients. Now, at least 3 people were dead on arrival at the hospital. 2 others had to be transferred, one a severe burn injury. The hospital's president and CEO, Leonard Aubrey, says that immediate treatment was given to 200 people suffering from cuts, lacerations, and other traumas, some with severe chest pains and smoke inhalation. Meantime, those who arrived at the hospital were given face masks and bottled water, all of them, by the way, covered with soot and ash from the debris. The hospital president, who was here in 1993 when the World Trade Center bombing occurred, said the hospital at that time treated about 200 people, but with very milder injuries. He says today's catastrophe was much, much worse. Jim?
And I'm sure you've been telling us, in a sense, the positive things, in the sense that the injuries that something can be done about. The word from the mayor earlier was that he has said he has a sense of the horrendous number of lives lost. We haven't even begun to talk about that yet, about morgue facilities that are around, because if you had the 2 largest office buildings on the island of Manhattan, both totally demolished, you can't begin to believe the number of lives that must have been lost in that tragedy.
Jim, another thing, I mean, so much of the city is shut down as far as the transportation goes. Something else that we want to alert people to, baseball games today have been canceled. And also, regarding President Bush and his whereabouts, the Secret Service is not saying at this point where the president is.
I suppose that might be true of the mayor as well, since we've not heard from him.
Usually the mayor is at the scene immediately, and he's always holding a press conference, certainly within an hour of something, you know, horrible happening, and something of this proportion. You know that they must be keeping him safe and sound, just in case there are any other lunatics out there.
And as you know, ladies, the city's emergency facility, the so-called bunker, is down there in the World Trade Center. So we don't know what kind of shape that is in, despite all the precautions taken to secure that facility. It may have been damaged as well. The communications facilities may have been. The mayor may be there, he may not be, but we have heard from him. We haven't seen him directly, but we have a quote from him telling us about the loss of light.
To describe the level of anger that you have.
Oh, now I'm told we have the mayor on the phone talking to someone, and we're listening in.
Wonderful people that were affected by this. There's no reason for this. You never thought you would live to see.
I couldn't agree more, sir. Thank you for joining
Thank
us. New York's Mayor Rudy Giuliani on what was to be an election day. The mayor not up for re-election because of term limits. But the
sounds like a
election has been
radio
postponed.
station that the
Yeah, it
mayor
does.
must have called into.
And Jim, the bunker that you're just talking about, the Office of Emergency Management, is actually, and you know this, but I just want to clarify this for the audience, is actually across the street from the towers that went down.
We understand, I am just told now, that the mayor himself was in some way trapped for about 20 minutes, either in or near the World Trade Center. That whether it was for his own safety or whether he was trapped inside the building somehow, we don't know. But we are trying, as you can well imagine, to get the mayor on the phone as soon as we can, and as soon as we're able to reach him, we'll give you the latest on that aspect of this tragedy.
We should mention that, you know, a lot of our TV crews are a few blocks away from Ground Zero, the World Trade Center, because, you know, the rescue operations, the police department, the fire department, they don't want anything, you know, hurting their way, you know, getting people out and getting people to hospitals. So we're a few blocks away from the scene, trying to get as much information as we possibly can to you about your loved ones and just about the situation down at the World Trade Center.
You know, Rosanna, one thing, too, that people really don't think about, because we're here, we're on the air, we're bringing them information, is that we have people who live outside of Manhattan, that live in the other boroughs, that can't get to work. Others, I ran into Alan Horowitz, one of our cameramen, and he walked 5 miles from Queens to get here. In order to get here, to get to a live truck, to get to a location, to be able to bring people the information that they need to know about what's going on downtown.
Well, the same thing with our executive producer, Joe Kleins. He lives on Long Island, and he wound up walking across the 59th Street Bridge and then, you know, all the way to work. And I mean, you know, we're journalists, we're supposed to be objective, but we live in this city, we're human beings, we're raising our children here, and so we're just as concerned as anybody else about what's happening in our town right now.
And trying just to get the information out there to you as quickly as we can. We were talking about this earlier too, Rosanna. I mean, when you look at this video, it is so hard to believe that this is something that's actually happening. It looks like some type of action thriller movie.
It is surreal.
Not reality.
It is surreal. I mean, you talk about the World Trade Center, a landmark in our city, a symbol to the world. It's a symbol of strength and power wiped out from our skyline forever. And at the same time this is happening, another attack, another terrorist attack in Washington.
Right, at the Pentagon, collapsing 5 stories there as well. And some of the video that we were looking at earlier, just showing those people after the first plane crashed into the first tower, and people hanging out the windows, just, you know, that they were just hoping that someone was going to be able to get to them in time to rescue them. And a short time later, it collapses. So you can just imagine the devastation and the number of people who lost their lives today or who were seriously injured. It's absolutely mind-boggling, just incredible.
And, you know, some people have brought up that this is a symbolic day, too, Primary Day, a day where our country goes and casts their votes, one of the great freedoms that we have in this country, canceled for the day.
Okay, Rosanna, they're telling us now that Dick Oliver is on the phone. He's been working this story and has been downtown since this thing happened about 9:15 this morning. Dick, are you there?
I'm here.
What's the latest from down there, Dick?
Well, I'm at the NYU Downtown Hospital, formerly Beekman Hospital, which is about a block and a half away from City Hall and about 6 blocks away from the World Trade Center. This was the central point for receiving patients, not only from the area of the World Trade Center, the surrounding area, but people who were suffering from the debris, from the ash and the soot that still covers the area here. I'm looking outside the window of the hospital now, and it looks as though a snowstorm occurred with 2 or 3 inches of snow all over the cars. It is a ghost town down here. As we reported earlier, after the second explosion, the police and other emergency officials moved people out of the Wall Street and downtown area north. People piled onto the Brooklyn Bridge. Traffic was limited on the bridge, and people just poured over. and headed north of this area. We are looking at a ghost town now. Here at the hospital, 3 people arrived at DOA very early on. 2 people had to be transferred to other hospitals because of burns and other serious problems. The main function of the hospital here is to deal with people with severe breathing problems. The hospital has handed out face masks for people to breathe through. The hospital's the CEO and president, Leonard Aubrey, told me that he was here for the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and that this thing is much worse. He said there were much more minor injuries at the earlier explosion. Some 200 people were treated. So the hospital has established a second emergency room to deal with some 250 cases as a result of this catastrophe.
Who has some up-to-date information for us as well. He's in the newsroom. John.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Linda. Let me just give you the latest information now that we have from around the world on this situation. Overseas, Britain has placed all of their government facilities in the UK on high alert. In California, the government workers there have been all sent home. The buildings there have all been shut down. Several states have closed their schools, offices, all the landmarks. The border between our country and Mexico has been closed. New Jersey Transit has halted all of its rail service in the Northeast Corridor, New Jersey Coastline and Raritan Valley Coastline. That service was suspended, we're told, at the request of the authorities. Here in